Hi, welcome to NorthMind. When we think of war, we picture epic struggles for power, resources, or ideology. Textbook stuff. But history isn't always so logical. Sometimes wars start for reasons that are downright absurd. Imagine two superpowers nearly fighting over a pig, or a full-scale invasion sparked by a looted bakery. It sounds like fiction, but it's true. Today, we're diving into 10 times countries almost, or actually did, go to war for the most ridiculous reasons imaginable. Let's get started. Our first stop, let's travel back to the misty San Juan Islands in 1859, a time when the Pacific Northwest was a wild frontier, and the fate of empires could turn on the smallest of incidents. The border between the United States and British Canada was anything but clear. Both nations laid claim to the San Juan Islands, their maps overlapping, their ambitions colliding. This ambiguity set the stage for a bizarre and almost comical international crisis. On these foggy islands, American settlers and employees of the powerful British Hudson's Bay Company lived side by side. For years they managed an uneasy peace, sharing the land but not the loyalties, until a single pig tipped the balance. The trouble began with a black pig, owned by British farmer Charles Griffin. This pig had a particular fondness for the potatoes grown by American settler Lyman Cutler, and it made a habit of raiding his garden, rooting up the precious crop. After repeated warnings and mounting frustration, Cutler finally took matters into his own hands. One fateful day, he shot the pig, hoping to end the raids once and for all. Realizing the gravity of his action, Cutler offered Griffin $10 in compensation, a significant sum for the time. But Griffin, feeling insulted and perhaps seeing an opportunity, demanded $100 instead. The negotiation quickly soured, and Cutler refused to pay. The British authorities, eager to assert their control, threatened to arrest Cutler for killing the pig. What began as a farmyard dispute now threatened to become an international incident. Alarmed, the American settlers rallied together, fearing British overreach. They called for military protection, convinced that their rights and perhaps their land were at stake. The United States responded swiftly, dispatching troops under the command of the ambitious Captain George Pickett. Soldiers in blue uniforms landed on the island, determined to defend American interests. Not to be outdone, the British sent a fleet of warships, their cannons bristling, anchoring just offshore. The standoff escalated rapidly, with both sides refusing to back down. Suddenly, hundreds of soldiers and dozens of cannons faced each other across the island, all because of one unfortunate pig. The world watched as two mighty empires teetered on the brink of war. For months, tensions soared. Both armies dug in, building camps and fortifications, each side waiting for the other to make the first move. The threat of battle hung heavy in the air, but in the end, cooler heads prevailed. Admiral Robert Baines, commanding the British forces, refused to start a war over a pig, declaring it would be foolish and childish to do so. A compromise was reached. Both nations agreed to a joint military occupation of the island, a tense but peaceful arrangement that lasted for 12 years, until the United States was finally awarded the territory. In the end, the only casualty of this near war was one very expensive pig, whose price tag became the stuff of legend. Sometimes the fate of nations really does hinge on the price of pork. The so-called pig war remains a reminder of how even the smallest spark can ignite international tensions. And so, a humble potato patch and a hungry pig nearly started a war between two empires. Next up, a runaway dog and the brink of Balkan War. Stay tuned for another tale where history turns on the most unlikely of events. In 1925, the Greek-Bulgarian border was a powder keg, tense and heavily guarded after years of regional strife. The air was thick with suspicion, and every movement was watched closely by soldiers on both sides. One seemingly ordinary day, a Greek soldier's loyal dog slipped away, darting across the invisible line that separated the two countries. Without thinking, the soldier chased after his beloved pet, crossing into Bulgarian territory. Suddenly, border guards, already on edge, opened fire. The Greek soldier was shot, and chaos erupted as gunfire echoed across the hills. Outrage swept through Greece. The government demanded a formal apology and financial compensation, while Bulgaria insisted its guards had acted in self-defense, fearing an incursion. Tensions escalated rapidly. Greek troops invaded, occupying several border villages and advancing toward the Bulgarian town of Pastry, determined to assert their national pride. For a moment it seemed that a full-scale war might break out, all because of a runaway dog. The world watched anxiously. Only the urgent intervention of the League of Nations prevented disaster, ordering Greece to withdraw its forces and pay reparations to Bulgaria. The crisis was diffused, but it was a stark reminder of how quickly small, almost trivial incidents can spiral out of control and threaten peace. In a climate of fear and mistrust, even the innocent actions of a runaway pup can bring nations to the brink of war. Next, we'll see how a pastry chef's complaint managed to trigger a naval blockade and international uproar. Let's head to Mexico City, where another unlikely incident would make history. Mexico City, 1838. French pastry chef, Monsieur Remontel's bakery was looted by Mexican officers. His pleas for compensation were ignored, so he appealed to France. France demanded 600,000 pesos from Mexico, an outrageous sum. When Mexico refused, France blockaded ports and bombarded Veracruz in the so-called Pastry War. General Santa Anna lost a leg defending the city. After months of fighting and British mediation, Mexico paid up and France withdrew. Thousands died all over a baker's complaint. Sometimes a craving for sweets can cost a country dearly. Now let's see how a soccer match sparked a real war. 1. In 1969, El Salvador and Honduras met on the soccer field for World Cup qualifiers, but the stakes were far higher than a spot in the tournament. Beneath the surface, decades of tension simmered. This was about more than just the beautiful game. Land disputes, economic hardship, and a surge of Salvadoran migrants into Honduras had created a powder keg. Anti-immigrant sentiment and bitter arguments over farmland fueled deep-seated hatred between the two nations. The soccer matches quickly became proxy battles for national pride and resentment. Fans hurled insults and objects, players were threatened, and violence erupted both inside and outside the stadium after each game. When El Salvador ultimately won, the fallout was immediate and severe. Diplomatic ties were cut, and the region braced for what would come next. Just days later, El Salvador launched a military invasion of Honduras, turning a sports rivalry into a full-scale war. The so-called football war raged for 100 hours. In that short time, thousands lost their lives, and more than 100,000 people were forced to flee their homes, leaving devastation in their wake. The Organization of American States stepped in to broker a ceasefire, but the wounds, both physical and emotional, would last for decades, shaping the region's history. In the end, the war was never truly about soccer. The matches were simply the spark that ignited long-standing grievances and unresolved conflicts. Sometimes, the world's most popular sport can become a flashpoint for real-world violence, reminding us that games can reflect, and even inflame, the passions of entire nations. Next, we travel to Australia for a conflict even stranger, a war not against another country, but against birds. And yes, in this bizarre chapter of history, the birds actually won. So, let's head down under and discover how Australia's most unusual war unfolded. Western Australia, 1932. Farmers faced a new enemy, 20,000 emus destroying crops. The government sent soldiers with machine guns to fight the birds. The emus outran and outsmarted the army, scattering and dodging bullets. After thousands of rounds, only a few hundred emus were killed. The operation was a farce. The army retreated, twice. The press mocked the Emu War. Eventually, bounties replaced bullets. The emus won, and the military was humbled. Sometimes nature just can't be conquered by force. Now, let's see how paranoia nearly started a war at sea. The Dogger Bank incident is next. 11. 1904. The Russo-Japanese War. The Russian Baltic Fleet, paranoid and inexperienced, sailed through the North Sea. In thick fog, they mistook British fishing boats for enemy ships and opened fire. Boats were sunk, fishermen killed, and even Russian ships hit each other. Britain was outraged, nearly declaring war. Diplomacy saved the day. Russia apologized and paid compensation. The fleet continued, only to be destroyed by Japan later. The Dogger Bank incident proved how fear and confusion can bring nations to the brink. Next, a severed ear sparks a decade-long war. 1. British Captain Robert Jenkins presented Parliament with his severed, pickled ear, allegedly sliced off by Spanish Coast Guards years earlier. The story, true or not, became a rallying cry for war. Britain, eager for new markets and revenge, declared war on Spain. The War of Jenkins' Ear lasted nearly a decade, merging into larger European conflicts. Thousands died, all over a gruesome symbol. Sometimes propaganda is all it takes to start a war. Next, a bloodless standoff between lumberjacks. The Aroostook War is up 9. 1830s Maine and New Brunswick. A vague border and valuable timber led to rival lumberjacks clashing in the Aroostook River Valley. Maine sent a posse to expel New Brunswick loggers who captured them. Both sides called up militias, ready to fight over trees. Newspapers demanded war, but neither government wanted bloodshed. General Winfield Scott negotiated a truce and joint occupation. The Aroostook War ended without a battle, just a few accidents and a lot of bluster. Diplomacy prevailed and the border was settled in 1842. Sometimes the only thing chopped down is the tension. Next, a 21st century standoff over a rock. Perejil Island awaits. 1. Morocco occupied tiny Perejil Island near Spain, claiming it was to stop smuggling. Spain saw it as an invasion and launched a special forces operation. Spanish commandos retook the island without a shot. The world watched as two allies nearly went to war over a barren rock. US mediation restored the status quo. No one occupies the island now. Even in modern times, pride over a patch of land can bring nations to the brink. Next, a decades-long fight over fish. The Cod Wars are up 9. 1950s to 70s. The UK and Iceland clashed over fishing rights in the North Atlantic. Iceland extended its fishing limits. Britain sent warships to protect trawlers. Icelandic patrol boats cut nets. British frigates rammed boats. No torpedoes, but plenty of danger. The standoff escalated as Iceland pushed its limits to 200 miles. NATO allies were dragged in, and Iceland threatened to close a key base. In the end, Iceland won. Britain conceded, and its fishing towns suffered. The Cod Wars proved that for some nations fish are worth fighting for. Now let's wrap up with what these stories teach us. 9. From pigs to pastries, runaway dogs to unbeatable birds, history shows that wars can start for the most ridiculous reasons. These stories reveal how fragile peace is, and how easily pride, fear, or misunderstanding can ignite conflict. The absurdity of these triggers highlights the irrational side of human nature. Which story shocked you most? Let us know in the comments. Subscribe to NorthMind for more unbelievable history. Thanks for watching.